and welcome back, everybody. We are here today talking about Children of Dune and God Emperor of Dune. This is the follow-up to our first episode where we talked about Dune and Dune Messiah. And when I say talked about, I really mean is assault the eardrums of our resident Dune casual, aka William Engels. I'm here today with none other than God Emperor Richard II, and
Hello.
of course, Will Engels. And Richard, tell me, what is Children of Dune? We got to get into it.
Oh yeah, I am into it already.
We're
I am
starting
down
on
to my
Children
neck
of
in
Dune.
Dune.
Yes.
So Children of Dune is the third entry in the Dune saga, and I don't think it would be a stretch to say that it's my favorite. At least from a narrative perspective, it's incredibly coherent. It's got really, really interesting themes and moments. It's got really well fleshed out characters. We get even more Duncan Idaho,
Yep.
which will continue to be,
Yep.
will never
Get a
stop
lot
being
more
a thing.
Duncan Idaho.
And guess what? By the end of this episode, we will see him be tortured over and over and over again for thousands of years
buddy.
straight.
Oh, yeah, buddy.
But so
For thousands
Children
of
of Dune.
years.
Oh,
This
yes.
takes on
Oh,
like
yeah.
a recreational quality when it's that long.
Yes, that is not hyperbole, by the
no,
way, Will.
it's not hyperbolistic. We'll cover that when we get to God Emperor of Dune. That's when the real...
Did he deserve it, in your opinion?
No.
Duncan Idahos is a good dude. No, he's a good dude by all metrics. He's basically
He's a good egg.
I mean, he's basically like a space Taoist or something. You know what I mean? What do they call? What is it that poetry that he quotes? Shit, I'm blanking on it. I'm supposed to be the expert here. But he basically has this like space mantra that it's like space Zen Buddhism that he quotes all the time. I'll pull something up from it. But yeah,
I mean,
keep
Is that
going.
the thing about fear being the mind killer?
No, it's
no,
not.
that's the litany of fear.
That's the litany against
dingus.
fear, dumbass. Come on.
Yeah,
Get the
Jesus
fucking
Christ.
program. We've already talked about this for hours. Come on. Litany against fear. That's Benny Gesserit, okay? Totally different.
I live for your disdain. Oh, it fills me with such power to know that you hate me this
It's okay.
much.
I know I'm going to reap what I sow when we do an episode about your fixation, so it's okay. I'll get it out while I can.
You peach ring eating dingbat.
Yeah, this is what we're doing instead of the fragments of Heraclitus or the corporate history of Palantir.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, so when we last left off on our adventures in Dune Messiah, Paul Atreides' master plan had kind of unfolded. He had reached a point where he was sick of godhood. He was sick of the sacrifices he had to make to get where he was. And he realized that at the end of the day, things needed to change. And all that happened around the moment where the nuke was detonated. He lost his eyesight, which, audience, remember that, because there's a character that's going to come up that's totally not Paul, who may be attached to that. But he ends up exiling himself into the desert, and his two children, the twins Leto II and Ghanima, were left more or less in the care of Princess Irulan, Aaliyah, his abominable half-sister,
Anya
and
Taylor-Joy.
Actually, full sister.
To
Anya
decode.
Taylor-Joy.
Yep.
And Lady Jessica, who is his mother. Now, Children of Dune takes place roughly 9 years later. Oh, what's up?
You're also forgetting who is actually taking care of Leto II and Ghanima when we get to Children of Dune, which is, like you said, 9 years later. It's Stilgar, dude. Stilgar.
Oh, yeah, my boy Stilgar.
Yeah,
dude.
he's like the major influence in their life, actually, because
Javier Bardem, again, to
Yeah.
decode.
Well, so just to when Children of Dune kicks off, right? We've got a 9-year time skip. Then it starts off with it's Leto and Ghanima. There's all sorts of other stuff going on that we'll get into. Plotting's happening is how the book kind of starts. But we find them. They're in one of the sietches, and they're basically being raised in the way of Fremen children by Stilgar, and he is teaching them all of the things like water discipline and how to walk in the desert and that sort of thing. And they're having a fairly traditional Fremen upbringing, apart from the fact that they freak everybody out because that's one of the key aspects to remember about Leto II, Ghanima, and Aaliyah, who is Paul's sister, is that they are all what are called preborn, right? So preborn basically means that they were awakened to full consciousness with all the memories of their ancestors, their whole heritage, active and awakened in their mind as neonates, essentially. And
These are the really difficult kindergartners.
they are
yeah.
the most difficult kindergartners you could ever
These are the
possibly
ones
imagine.
where it's like a parent-teacher conference every 2 weeks for the entire year. Yeah.
Well, really,
Yeah,
because
these are the kids where they show up to their own parent-teacher conference as their own parents.
wearing a little suit, right? They wear little suits.
Little
They're
suit and tie.
They've got a little
boss baby.
little briefcase. Yeah, little boss babies. They are little boss babies. And there's there's little excerpts from the books where they basically you'll see this where people are like, listen, Leto, Ganima, you gotta stop walking up to people and saying things like, oh, did you have a good hunt? I remember what it's like to tear the life from a beast. Yes, my ancestor Nimrod, of course. I remember my great ancestor Nimrod, great hunter. Everybody, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, this is the kind of things that they do. Sorry, I'm already halfway through this arrogant bastard, but it freaks people the fuck out. They're weird kids. They're really weird kids.
Also, something I'd like to mention, or actually, no, I'll just prompt you with it, Thomas. Is Arrakis the same world that we know and remember, or has it changed a bit?
Oh, it's changed a little bit, Richard. It's changed a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's changed. So, part of the process of, when Paul Muad'Dib became emperor, he continued with the terraforming project of Dune, essentially. He started turning it a lot more lush and green. They kind of mentioned this in Children of Dune, where it's like, yeah, literally. And it's like, there's grasslands. There's open water in many places. A lot of CHs will have dedicated water reservoirs that are open air, which 30 years ago, during the time of the first Dune book, would have just been unthinkable. You'd never leave just water laying around where the sun will evaporate it, and you'll lose all of it. But nowadays, things are a lot chiller. There's more water freely accessible, and people have grown a little softer. The Fremen have sort of
fat with water.
They are fat with water, indeed. That's one thing to know about Children of Dune. By the way, I'm going to say this up front. Children of Dune is my favorite book. It's super exciting.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting, and a lot of shit happens, and it covers some really interesting topics. It's got some uncomfortable moments, but that's okay. The ending is so well done, and Leto. Okay, so Children of Dune, big picture. It covers the story of Leto II, Paul's kid, from wee baby man to the new God Emperor of the known universe, right? That's it's Paul's story, but his son and what he does differently, which is super important. And I can't wait till we get to I can't wait to talk about the scene where he finally encounters the prophet. But so, Richard, we've kind of set up these characters a little bit. What happens? What's happening early on?
So, in Paul's absence, the Imperial Council has become, it's still powerful. The Landsrat is still in charge, but its power is kind of waning because people don't have the same confidence in Aaliyah as they did in Paul, because Aaliyah is not their god. Aaliyah is not their god emperor. And frankly, much like the children, she is preborn and creepy as hell as a product. Nobody likes Aaliyah. Everybody is deeply uncomfortable around her because she has a sinister atmosphere. And part of the reason why is, as Thomas mentioned, preborn have all of the memories of their ancestors. And something we kind of glossed over in the first episode is that a big reveal in actually the first book is that Lady Jessica, who is Paul Atreides' mom, is the daughter of Baron Harkonnen, which means that Baron Harkonnen exists in the lineage of Aaliyah. And as we did mention in the last episode, sometimes when you're preborn, a phenomenon occurs called abomination, where you are possessed by the memories and the will and the ego of your ancestors because it is stronger than yours. And unfortunately, Aaliyah is being taken over by Baron Harkonnen.
This is what happens to most white children when they listen to Pink Floyd. The memory of their ancestors overpowers them.
Their
Can't help it
boomer
anymore.
uncle shows
They
up.
start talking about The Wall and Wish You Were Here, and how people don't listen to those even though they're really good.
Yeah, people don't
Yeah,
listen to
this-
good music anymore.
Yeah, this happens
you
to
start
every
wearing
13-year-old.
tie-dye.
Yeah,
So
it's a rite of
their
passage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah.
So before we run right into the rest of the plot, there are a couple other characters I want to set up who we have not mentioned yet. So the previous government before Paul Atreides was led by what we would call House Carino. That was their great house. And in the last episode, we mentioned that Princess Irulan was a bit antagonistic towards Paul Atreides, but by the end of the book, she was kind of converted to his cause and the cause of the Bene Gesserit. Her younger sister, Princess Winsesia, does not feel that way. Princess Winsesia is very upset by the declined power of House Carino. Shut up, Will. Don't you dare laugh. This is very serious.
Princess
is very serious.
Winsesia. I'm sorry.
Winsesia. And
Uh.
she has a bit. Will, you are not paying this excellent
Yeah.
philosophical text.
Show
The
some
deserves.
respect.
You'll
Show some
have to
respect.
cut out my tongue and torture me for 1,000 years.
No, we'll just bring you to life over and over and over again while your
Yep.
best friend's son slowly turns into a monster.
Yeah.
But so Princess Winsesia has a plot where ultimately she wants to.
I'm sorry.
Don't worry, we won't be talking.
Yours,
we'll talk-
asshole.
Yeah, fuck you, Will.
Fuck
Are we
you,
at 10
Will.
minutes? Yeah, we're at
You should
11
be-
minutes.
You should
Fuck
be
you,
mad.
Will.
You should be mad at Frank Herbert for coming up with such a ridiculous name.
Frank Herbert has a lot of
less ridiculous
names.
than it's less ridiculous than Duncan Idahos.
That's
to be
also
fair.
a stupid name. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a lot of stupid names.
Johnny Montana.
Idaho, 10,000 years in the future across the galaxy. Idaho will be preserved.
I would read Frank Herbert's Johnny Montana. I don't care what it's about. I'd read it.
Be like if there was a scene from Dune where you're like with the soldiers and be like, we call this guy Kmart in memory of a great institution that existed in prehistory.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
The great
Okay.
Commander Circle K.
So we're so close to being done setting up the characters. I have two more. So Princess, and don't you hold your tongue, mister. Princess Winsesia has a son who she'd like to install on the throne named Faradine. And ultimately, to do it, she wants to kill the twins and get, I believe at first it's marry him to Aaliyah. That eventually changes.
Yeah. So that's kind of a key thing. The plot. This is where shit starts to get really complicated. I mean, it's a lot like Dune Messiah. And what I love about Children of Dune is it mixes the intricate plotting and scheming and intrigue from Dune Messiah and the action and excitement and adventure and rise to power that is Dune, right? In Leto II, he is Paul Atreides doing his badass shit in the context of this really intense and grand political scheming.
Mm-hmm.
Clip it. Anyhow.
No. Fair.
I'm just trying to somehow mentally prepare for the Habsburgian, family tree dynamics that are about to click in for people that have never existed. So, go on.
So one last character.
Tell me more about
Now-
intermarriage and family alliances.
Oh, we'll get there, pal.
Yeah, we'll get there, pal.
I'm so ready.
One last character that I'd like to set up before we go sprinting and running and squirting and squelching on the plot is a character who goes by the name of the Preacher. Now, he's very mysterious. He's obviously a character we've never, ever encountered before. He is a preacher who rose up in the Sietches of Arrakis, and he is kind of preaching an anti-Orthodox message about the state religion of Paul Atreides. He talks about how he should not be treated as a god, and that he's not a god. He was a man and a revolutionary. He goes against the teaching, and this is totally irrelevant, but he's blind, and he seems to know a whole lot about Paul, but you don't know who it is. We have no idea who this guy is, okay? You understand that, Will? Paul ran into the desert and went blind. This guy is blind and knows a lot about Paul, and they're two separate people.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
I
All
will say, Children of Dune cock teases you about the Preacher for a long time. It's not until like it's one of those things where it's like well, it doesn't confirm yes, this is Paul until like the end of the book, and it's really irritating.
Because you know.
I mean, it's
You know,
pretty,
it's not
it's
a-
really There's like no
You're
one
like,
else it could
Frank,
be.
dude, come on,
Yeah.
man.
Well,
Like, we
and it's
know
no,
how
no,
to
no, but
read.
it's fun because it happens like in the text as well, too, right? Where the presence of the preacher is like freaking people, like, or these Orthodox, Muad'Dib heads, that's freaking them out because he's preaching this heretical message, and everyone's asking in the text, like, is this guy Paul coming back from the desert? Because Al, no, he
Yeah.
didn't. No one saw him
Well,
die,
during
right?
during his sermons, they yell it out to him, like, "Are you
Yes.
Paul? Confirm or
Yeah.
deny?"
Yeah. No, that's like the whole book. And it's kind of fun and it's interesting. But yeah, I mean, it's obviously him. And it's very obvious to us as the reader, but, the role he plays in the story is that functioning of sort of like undermining of the state religion, right? And undermining his own religion, which, I mean, even in Dune Messiah, he fucking hates. Like, he hates having
Mhm.
a religion based off of him that murders billions in his name. He doesn't really like that. Paul's a decent guy in that sense, where he's like, I don't really like this very much. I'm also not going to
Did
say
he ever
no.
just try telling his followers to stop killing people?
No, he did not try that. Maybe it would have worked. But you got to remember, he's prescient, so he knows the
So in
outcome
other
of
words,
every action he makes.
he's just racking his brain trying to come up
Yeah.
with ways to mitigate this.
Don't be
And he
shitty.
thought, I'll sneak in as another person, and I'll start a countercurrent preaching against the cult of my own religion, rather than just like, getting out there on the imperial megaphone and being like, this needs to stop.
Well, something that you'll see, Will, is that he may
I'm
have
just
known
saying.
things in that book that he didn't tell us yet.
Okay, I mean, it's just if he hates all the killing in his name, why doesn't he stop it?
Because it's
Well,
ultimately necessary in ways that we will reveal near the end of this
yeah.
book when we
Well,
talk
I
about
mean,
what's called the Golden Path.
it is and isn't, but that was kind of the point of Dune Messiah, right? The point of Dune Messiah was to show how Paul was trapped in a web of prophecy and prescience of his own making, right? But to the point where his field of options were extremely limited, right? He couldn't
Mhm.
escape this, like, prescience traps him, essentially, and it sets him on set paths and that he knows he can't deviate from, and if he tries to, bad things happen. And, I mean, it's definitely more sophisticated than hand waving, like, oh yeah, like he knows it's all these bad things happen but he doesn't care. It's like, no, he cares a lot. The whole point is that he's miserable. He basically intentionally blinds himself and then exiles himself to the desert by design. Like, he chooses to do all of
Yeah.
those things in Messiah, right? And that's why that's the whole point of the book, is how miserable it is.
Well, and Will, just to address what you said briefly, Paul does kind of talk about that, because there is a point, and I believe we mentioned it briefly in the last episode, where something that makes Paul feel smothered and trapped is that every single time he makes a decision, he sees the rippling, echoing effects of it thousands of years in the future. And so at some point, it makes him so indecisive and depressed that he ceases to do anything. But that's an issue too, because then he starts to see how his indecision changes things and how that has a rippling effect over thousands of years. And that's basically why he reaches the conclusion that he just has to walk along this path, set things up, and let them execute. And in the last book, it appears that he totally abandoned all this stuff and effectively committed spiritual suicide to back out of it. But this book unpacks how his decisions are continuing to affect the future by design.
Yeah.
Largely through Leto II.
All right. So that's enough setup, and that's enough talking about Dune Messiah. Yeah, I know. I'm with you, man. Let's keep it moving here. The book picks up with the plot, the big sort of one of the big pivots that this book revolves around is the plot to assassinate Leto II and Ganima by House Torino, right? So they have these laser tigers,
the laser tigers, bro.
That they train specific. It's this fucking convoluted thing where they're like, I love
Sharks
it's
with
like
motherfucking laser
dude,
beams.
it's fucking crazy. No, dude, it's like the very first scene of the book. is they're on whatever that planet is, where the Sardaukar are from.
Seleucus Secundus.
Yeah, they're on Seleucus Secundus. They have these two big fucking genetically engineered, electronically controlled tigers that have been trained specifically to attack anyone wearing a specific color. It's just like a specific color of garment, right? And it's like a very specific color. And so they just find two random kids, dress them in the colors, like, oh, let's see if the tigers kill them. Sure enough, the tigers maul two innocent children. And then the
Frank
controllers
Herbert.
are like, all right, now you go kill the operator. And that's how the fucking book starts. The plot is this plot is so fucking convoluted. The plot is to send Ferrodin, who's the heir of House Carino, as to Arrakis, proposition Ganima for marriage, present her and Leto with these beautiful garments. They will wear them, and then they will release the laser tigers to kill them. That's the plan. I shit you not. That's the plan. And it almost works.
Will, here's something you need to know about Frank Herbert. Frank Herbert loves two storytelling devices more than anything else, and that is Trojan horse characters who are mind controlled through triggers, like what do you call them? Manchurian candidates. Yeah. And he also loves Rue Goldberg machines that eventually lead to somebody's death.
Yeah.
Again, to me, this is pure Cold War ideology. Like talking about the laser tigers, like the spooks that were trying to give Fidel Castro like a poisoned scuba diving suit, or an exploding cigar. Another
conch
plot
shell
to
that he'll
put,
pick up and shoot in the head. Yeah.
A radioactive dust in his shoes to make his beard fall out and destroy his masculine, pride. I mean,
I love it.
This is this is like between the remote control mind puppets of the Manchurian Candidate and like MK Ultra and shit versus
this book was published in the 70s, so it checks out.
It checks out.
Hanna-Barbera cartoon level execution tactics.
Right. Well, so that's kind of one of the main. That's one of the like I said, the pivots, right? That the story rotates around, and it ends up being kind of one of the significant things. But the story on Arrakis with the Atreides really picks up when Lady Jessica, Paul and Aaliyah's mother, returns from Caladan, where she's been staying basically since the end of Dune Book 1. I mean, she wasn't really involved in Dune Messiah too terribly much, if I'm not mistaken. But she shows back up in Children of Dune, and she's basically like, okay, shit's fucked, what's going on? There's this great scene early on where she steps out of the spacecraft and goes up, and greets Aaliyah, who has basically assumed control over the empire of the known universe, Paul's empire. And she takes one look at her and is instantly like, oh, you've done two things. One, you have permitted an ancestral ego to take control of you. She can tell because she's a Bene Gesserit and they can tell. Two, she realizes that Aaliyah has committed a cardinal sin in the Bene Gesserit school, which is she has prevented herself from aging. This actually becomes really relevant, right? Especially in the next book, but near the end of this one too. The Bene Gesserit have such fine-tuned control over their like endocrine system, I think. Whatever hand-wavy bullshit they say, right? They have such fine-tuned control over their, endocrine hormonal systems that they're able to prevent themselves from aging. They deliberately don't do it because then everyone would not want to hang out with them. They would say, wow.
It would trigger a catastrophic wave of jealousy.
People would destroy the Bene Gesserit order if they knew they could prevent themselves from aging. So they simply choose to age.
What age did Aaliyah freeze herself at?
Early 30s.
No,
like
in her 20s.
Mid-30s.
Like 27 or 20, I think. Maybe 30. Something like that. Yeah.
She's a young woman, basically.
Young woman in like the prime of her beauty. The first thing that Jessica says to her, she's like, not the first thing, but she just looks like you haven't aged today, signifying she knows exactly what this bitch is doing. Because keep in mind, Aaliyah is not specifically Bene Gesserit trained, but her mother, and by extension, all of her mothers before her were Bene Gesserit, right? So she has access to all of the knowledge and training and instruction that every single one of them has. So she well knows exactly how to do this thing. And
Nobody believes
immediately,
it's just a South Korean skincare routine. No
immediately
one believes
Jessica
it's just
is
good sleep.
yeah, no. She's like, all right, we are enemies right now.
Another thing that I'd like to mention is that, so we talked about how Aaliyah is abomination. Now, because much like Aaliyah, because they are preborn, both Ganima and Leto II communicate with one another and know exactly what an abomination is. And in their private conversations, they actually express concern to one another that they may become abominations as well. And shortly after this interaction that Lady Jessica has with Aaliyah, she goes and meets the twins, who she's also kind of creeped out by, but she immediately recognizes that they are not abominations, unlike Aaliyah.
Well, yes and no. She's pretty confident they're not, but she puts it to the test later on.
Can we move forward in the plot, please?
Anyhow,
Can we scrub forward?
Sure. Yeah, scrubbing forward. All of this is sort of. I mean, this is all. I don't know. I mean, we're not gonna hit this like beat by beat plot point. Essentially, like that's kind of pointless. But there's a lot of conversations, and people go in, out, and around, and do all of have all these conversations. It ends up being a lot of like, whose side are you on? What is your goal? What are we trying to do here? That's like the whole like mid section of the book is people like doing some conniving shit and trying to like, especially with Jessica, right? Because she stirs the pot a lot.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting you mentioned that. So we'll kind of respond to what you said, where you kind of want to move the plot forward. So Thomas just mentioned that Jessica really has her finger on the pulse. She's very intuitive. She's incredibly talented. And so because of that, Aaliyah recognizes that if she wants to seize power, she has to kill Jessica. Because otherwise, Jessica is going to call her out on her bullshit and unravel the whole scheme. So she tries to assassinate Lady Jessica and fails miserably.
It's one of the best scenes. It's one of my favorite scenes in the book. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about it for a moment?
No, well, yeah, sure. I mean, essentially what happens is she sets the scene up. So this is moving on, right? Okay, Jessica's been here. Things have been going on. Aaliyah invites her formally to sit in on essentially a judicial hearing, right? Where she's holding court and passing judgments and things of that nature, right? So Jessica shows up. They're both sitting in their little chairs on the dais in this big fucking throne room in the Citadel in Arakeen that Paul built. And I forget, like, I don't remember the precise sequence of events, but essentially, like, some guy, it's the guy comes up and he's like, he writes like he performs like an offensive song against Aaliyah or something like that, and Jessica's like, "You're awesome, dude. I'm gonna hire you personally." And anyhow,
wait, so he disses her daughter, and her reaction is, "I'm gonna hire you."
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Jessica doesn't like Aaliyah because here's the thing. Aaliyah isn't an individual. Jessica doesn't think of Aaliyah as her daughter. Jessica thinks of Aaliyah as effectively Baron Harkonnen.
Yeah.
But mixed with Aaliyah's personality. She's a disgusting, weird... You want to talk about Aaliyah for a second,
Yeah,
Will?
so yeah, that's one probably...
Points,
Here, how about this? I'll finish up the conversation about what happens in the throne room, and then we can talk about Aaliyah and what happens to her over the course of the story, right? So... the throne room scene is wonderful because they're sitting there. It's super tense. Like, they're hearing a couple of cases. At some point, someone tries to just shoot Jessica with a gun, and she manages to dodge out of the way, but it's utter fucking chaos. And she had been having this discourse with these, like, old school Fremen who were like, hey, you're destroying the desert, right? Like, that's a big part of this too. Dune has radically changed in its ecology. It's no longer just a desert. There's like grasslands and fields and stuff, and it's becoming a real problem. Especially because sandworms are getting a lot harder to find. They only live in the deep desert now. They're really rare, and these old school Fremen are like, hey, can you do something about this? Like, yeah, fine. We want to avert an ecosystem, but we don't want to kill all the sandworms. Shai Hulud, our god. We don't want to like see it eradicated. And Aaliyah's basically like, why don't you go fuck yourselves? And Jessica's like, yeah, I hear you. so it leads to this super super tense scene where right after she's assassinated, Jessica's like, "Oh wow, she's actually just gonna try and kill me right now," because Aaliyah is the one behind the plot to assassinate Jessica, right? She's trying to kill her own mother, like Richard said.
Yeah.
She recognizes she's a threat, tries to kill her. Jessica's like, "Fuck this!" So she teams up with these what are they? They're the death commandos of ex-death
Hmm.
commandos from Paul's old glory days, and it's like her and five of them, and they beat the fuck out of this entire courtroom worth of army trying to kill Jessica. Essentially, they blast their way out of there, and Jessica goes into hiding. That's the result of that scene. It's a wonderful scene, but Richard, tell me, what's the deal with Aaliyah? Why is she such a bitch?
Well, Will, and the audience, there are some really silly, lighthearted scenes where Aaliyah is by herself and she decides to have some conversations with Grandpa Harkonnen. Now, for those listening, if you've seen the movies, her grandfather is a disgusting bastard. Remember, he's Alexander Skarsgård, the guy who rises out of the soy sauce after he's healed, and he's just putrid. And he wants revenge. He remembers getting killed by Aaliyah, ironically, and
He
he
doesn't.
is so.
No. Sorry.
He doesn't.
No, he doesn't. And I'll tell you specifically why. Because, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to be brief about it, though. So, the way that genetic memory works in this universe, right? If you have awareness of your ancestral, like, your predecessors, you have all of their knowledge and experience and skills and all of that stuff up until the point of conception, right? Anything past that, you do not have knowledge of, right? So, Leto and Ganima and Ken, like, they know everything about Paul up until the point
Okay.
they were conceived. So Harkonnen, Baron Harkonnen, in the Leah's ego of Baron Harkonnen that lives in her mind, does not remember being killed by Leah. In fact, he readily forgives her. He's like, "Yeah, I would have done the same thing if I were you, but can you let me fuck a little bit, please?"
Yeah, that's what we're trying to get to, is that he decides to help
Got
Aaliyah,
it,
and his
Thomas.
only
Memories
request.
memories stored in the jizz.
Yeah.
Is how you
Memory
could have phrased that.
Yeah.
Well, what we're trying to get to, and this is
Memory
basically
stored
the
in
entire.
balls!
Basically,
I
the
would
only
have
reason we're
really,
bringing
I would
this
have
up.
really hoped for, like Rupert Sheldrake's like morphogenetic field where you're the Alexander Skarsgård DNA can always crystally resonate with
That's not horny
everything that.
enough.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Just
All right.
not horny enough for
Not
a
horny enough.
balding fat
So
old man
so
like Frank
now
Herbert.
Aaliyah, who does not even really have a unified consciousness to speak of, like she isn't any one person.
She is.
So
She has her own ego. It's just that it becomes so. I mean, this is what Richard was driving at. She has these struggles with all of this horde of egos that are trying to overwhelm her, and she makes a deal with Baron Harkonnen mentally. That is, where he's like, "Hey, I have a really strong ego. I can keep all of them from bothering you and like actually driving you insane if you just let me, I don't know, drive the body once in a while. Maybe you could like fuck that cute choir boy or something, and like I could just hang out while you do it." Like, no, literally,
It's that,
like,
Will, it is that creepy.
it is literally like, that almost actually happens. Yeah, yeah.
Audience, by the way,
agreed.
Will's-
I knew from the way this was being set up that it would be some kind of deal with the devil, but yeah.
Oh, yeah.
wow.
Yeah,
Audience, for reference, because you can't see him, the light just left Will's eyes.
yeah. The realization of the degeneracy that is Frank.
I was really
Herbert's
hoping he was just gonna ask to like murder some people. Like, give me
Nah.
this body so I can take revenge on Paul, which would
Nah.
certainly be
You knew. I'm sorry. In your heart of hearts, you
I knew it would
be
be child
horny.
sexual
Yeah.
abuse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
No. Sorry, I should say
Okay,
it's not specifically child sexual abuse. It's she specifically she starts fucking like the high priest of her own religious order, or something to
Well,
that
that's pretty
effect.
sick, actually. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
right. It is kind of sick, but okay. God damn, and here's even one other thing we forgot to mention. In Dune Messiah, Aaliyah and the Gola Duncan Idaho form a relationship, right? And in Children of Dune, they're married. So she's, I mean, it's infidelity, but on the flip side, I mean, she is like the empress of the known universe. So, I mean, and Duncan
Yeah.
Idaho, by the way, I found it. He knows all about the Zen Sunni is what they're called,
Ooh.
and he quotes them constantly, and which is basically a denomination of Buddhism. He is basically a space Buddhist, and it's actually pretty sick.
Wait,
Alright,
so
so real quick-
Sunni, but Sunni like Islam combined
Buddy.
with Zen?
Yep.
Yeah, that's
It's
Frank
like the Orange
Herbert.
Catholic Bible
Dude,
has
he
parts of Islam as
fucking-
well.
Frank Herbert fucking loves the like aesthetics of Islam and some of the things he knew about it. But he just kind of felt it was cool to just mishmash it with things. He's
Yep.
like, yeah,
Will,
Islam's
it's kind
neat.
of weird. Frank Herbert is actually the second man that we've covered in our series of bad role models that loves Islam. The first being Lord Byron.
I think it is haram to mix Islam with Buddhism. I don't think either side would accept the other
It's-
necessarily.
Well, Baron,
not-
we've had
it's-
10,000 years to figure it out.
Yeah, it's
That's
also
right,
not.
yeah.
8,000.
10,000 years to
Buddhism.
crunch the numbers. I mean, we gave
Yeah.
Europe 2,000 years to work on the logical impossibility of the Trinity, and we got some insane philosophy out of it. So, I mean, sure.
On the level, it's just
Why not?
Buddhism. It's not, even
Yeah.
though the name would deceive you, be not deceived. It's just Buddhism.
Okay,
Yeah,
It's kind of
it's
fun.
Buddhism with the aesthetics of the Ottoman Empire. So,
Yeah.
So, moving the plot forward, so there is an unsuccessful attempt on Lady Jessica's life that prompts her to yeet the fuck out of there. Now, Ganima and Leto, Ganima and Leto also recognize that they are next on the chopping block if they don't do something about it. And so, at some point, Leto too goes to Stilgar, and was it Stilgar or was it Stilgar? He goes to Stilgar and is like, "Hey, I've got some crazy goofy stuff I got to do. I need you to make me a promise. If anybody attempts to hurt Ganima, you need to kill them, and that will become relevant later." And in the meantime, Leto too, and Ganima make a plan. He says, "We need everybody to think that I'm dead, including you." And because otherwise, Aaliyah has Bene Gesserit powers, she'll be able to read your body language and recognize that at a certain point, you know that I'm still alive. So they stage this elaborate fake assassination, and Ganima basically performs self-hypnosis using her genetic abilities to truly convince herself that Leto too is dead. Now, because of that, Leto decides to go out into who did he go with?
Right. Well, so here's the setup, right? While you're looking that up.
Yeah.
So this is the next sort of stage of the plot after Lady Jessica has gone into hiding and all those sorts of things. She flees. Ganima and Leto. So one thing to keep in mind is they're preborn, and they're sort of prescient because they have been eating spice since they were babies, like all Fremen. So they have the
like
predilection
all crack
for
babies.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they have the predilection for prescience, but they're not truly, fully, like, insanely prescient like Paul was, right? And so they can see, like, snippets of the future, but not really. And so they basically deduce the plot with the laser tigers to kill them. They're like, okay, this is what's going on.
These guys have mental superpowers and the ability to predict the future, and the best plan they can come up with is laser tigers.
No. Right. No. It's clever because they say, hey, there is an attempt on our life that is actively underway. We can use that basically to have one of us die, and then we can go and fuck off and find out all this other shit, and do our own thing while everyone thinks one of us is dead. And they kind of it's a toss up between Leto and Ganima who's actually going to do it, but Leto ends up being the one to do it. And they say, we're going to use this basically as an excuse. It was a successful assassination plot. Ganima convinces herself through hypnosis, like Richard said, that it was successful. So at a certain point in the book, everyone believes Leto II is dead, except for Leto II. He knows he's not dead.
Well, and part of the reason why Leto II needs to be dead is because there is a very special place he needs to go to, A, complete his prescient journey, and B, meet the preacher. And that is a cursed, dark place, Will. An evil place with a name that totally won't make you laugh, called Jackaroodoo. Jackaroodoo!
Dude, they talk about it so much in the book. Dude, they build it up. It's so funny. They're like, it's the mythical place, Jackaroodoo. And you want to know what's there when they get there? It's
What's there when
fucking
they get
shanty
there?
town. It fucking sucks. It's a bunch of like low lives living awful lives, and it's just like
Nothing scarier than poverty, obviously.
yeah, nothing scarier than poverty, my friend. Yeah.
Well, part of the reason why is because there's a lot of smugglers and stuff there. In the Fremen religion, Jackaroodoo, some horrible, evil, awful thing happened there, and it's considered just a permanently tainted place.
It's
and
taboo.
So
it's very taboo.
It's taboo. Yeah, it is a dark place that the Fremen are not meant to go to, but Leto II recognizes that that's where he needs to go.
It's because of the water stealers, remember?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
People,
the water stealers.
Yeah, there was a tribe of... the origin of Jackaroodoo is the legends come from a tribe of Fremen who would kill other Fremen just to steal their water, which most Fremen, at least in Paul's time, would do anyways, but like they specifically went and would like hunt other Fremen just to steal their water, which was fucked up.
They did it almost gleefully.
Yes.
Not just out of necessity.
We meet you do actually get a scene with a couple of water stealers, like is like a sort of aside at one point. It's kind of a fun and also extremely terrifying scene where they capture a dude and they're like, "Hey buddy, we're gonna take your water, okay?"
And they like freeze dry him, you know? They just suck it all out.
Yeah. They've got they've got it all. That's what they do. Terrifying. But yeah, he goes to Jackaroodoo.
Well, before he gets there, like on his way there, he ends up getting captured by a Fremen nomad group. And wouldn't you know it, Will, there's a friendly face that's been leading them. It's Gurney Halleck, motherfucker.
Fucking
He's
Gurney
back.
Halleck.
If you don't remember, Gurney Halleck
what's
Josh
his name?
Brolin.
Yes, Josh Brolin.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gurney Halleck, as a reminder to the audience, was the war master of the Atreides clan. He's the person who trained Paul Atreides in the art of combat, and he was also kind of a friend / mentor to Paul. He's a great character. We like Gurney Halleck in this household.
He plays the balisette all the time. Nice guy.
He plays the balisette all the damn time. He's a bard.
Yep.
Yeah. So, on his way there, the thing about the group and Gurney Halleck is that they force Leto to, and this is honestly where some of the greatest moments in the book happen. They force Leto to do the spice agony, the process that Paul went to that completed his journey to prescience, where you put the shaman gives you the tab, you put it on your tongue, and you start tripping balls.
Yep.
And there are these great scenes where Gurney Halleck is just sitting there. He's hanging out with Leto 2. And Leto 2 is starting to say some stuff that's concerning. He's like, he says stuff like, yeah, Gurney, my dad was a god, but he was like a small god. People don't know what God looks like yet. I'm going to show them what God looks like. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. And I'm going to show them a new god, a bigger god, the capital G god. And it's going to be me. And Gurney's like, okay, pal.
If your friend ever starts saying shit like that, you need to park him in front of the TV and make him watch Friends for a few hours. You need to know.
You need to turn on some new girls so you can calm down.
That's a classic sign that certain loops need to be closed.
Yeah. It's an interesting setup though. So essentially, he gets taken to Jackaroodoo by this group, and he's captured, and he is essentially captured and held prisoner by Gurney Halleck and a couple other guys, one of whom is an agent of Aaliyah, right? So Aaliyah knows that he's alive, and her agent does too, and he's basically under orders to just kill him at some point when he's unguarded. But yeah, but Gurney Halleck, who is working with this Fremen, is loyal to Jessica, and he's under orders from her to basically just keep giving this, I don't know, what's he like, 9 years old? Give this 9-year-old kid like daily heroic doses of the most potent drug in the known universe, just to see what he'll do. And
create a pretty rad kid. Yeah, you're gonna create create a kid named Bodhisattva who came out of the Grateful Dead tour. Yeah.
Dude, you're gonna create a man who's gonna create an empire that's gonna last for 800 years or 3,500 years as he becomes a giant
3,500.
worm.
Yeah.
3,500
Yeah.
years, he's going to be a big ass worm too.
I'll either
Which-
rule for 3,500 years as a giant worm, or I will become a psychotic mental wreck. But either
Yeah.
way,
Yeah,
either way,
that's kind of what they're
something
trying to
pretty
figure out.
fucking
Yeah, or I'll
something
do
pretty
henna
cool is gonna
tattoos at
happen.
Burning Man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Either one, yeah, same difference. So that's what he finds at Jackarutu, and it's a bunch of pretty rad fucking scenes where yeah, he's just like tripping balls. Richard, I think it's time.
It's time.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
time. And
Please,
we'll
by all
rest
means, my
assured,
friend.
we're closing up this book. So one of the things that Leto II sees in these increasingly absurd visions that he's having he has this vision of a little game that Fremen children used to play, where they would pick up what they call sand trout, which are baby worms, and they just kind of like put them on their arm, and they'd let them kind of suck a little bit of the water out of it or whatever they do. Long story short, they put these little trouts on their arm and then they pull them off. And he starts seeing, something he talks about is what he calls the golden path.
The golden path, dude. This is
the
it.
golden path,
This is
dog.
the key.
We're here, Will.
Yeah, we're here. This is the second half.
Thomas.
This is the second half
Will
of the
just
Dune
got
series.
goosebumps.
I know.
Yeah.
I just got goosebumps too.
So did I. All three of us have goosebumps.
Yeah.
And so Paul.
so wild.
I truly have
Leto
the
II.
patience of a god. Jesus Christ.
So Leto II in Jackarutu, once again, is tripping balls. He's walking around like a little toddler that can barely support himself. And he goes downstairs and he finds some of these trout as he's seeing this game that the children play. So he takes one and puts it on his body. And he's like, haha. And then he puts another one on. And then he puts another one on. And he keeps starting to cover himself in these sand trout. And there's this point where he more than just them being attached to his body, he feels this desire to fuse his body with them.
Okay, I know what's
Yep.
coming. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And he starts using his genetic his mastery of his own genetics to start fusing himself to these worms. Now, he doesn't immediately become a worm. At first, it's more like it becomes this carapace.
Yeah.
And suddenly he's like, oh my God, I feel amazing. I feel fantastic. And so he starts running around in the desert, and he's got so much energy that he just needs to get out.
I've
And it
never been
says that
so
he-
spry.
He's so spry, he's so bushy-tailed, and he realizes that he can almost swim through the sand. And as he's doing this, he has so much energy that he just needs to get out. And he starts to see it. He starts to see a future where the thing that limited Paul Atreides was that ultimately, regardless of his godhood, he was still human. And he starts to see this, much like Paul, he starts to see the almost inevitable extinction of mankind. But unlike Paul, he starts to see, Paul saw what Paul had to do. And what you kind of find out is that Paul effectively chose his humanity over his godhood and decided not to go down that path. And he effectively handed the torch to Leto, a person who was not burdened with the ego of a human upbringing like Paul was. And that's when Leto is like, oh, humanity needs not only a god, but a monster. And humanity needs to be, well, you know what? I was about to spoil something that's the ending. We'll get to that. We'll get to the last part of the golden path.
Yeah. Okay.
Why don't you pick it up from here, Thomas?
Yeah. So this is the big. So this is the pivotal moment that Richard just described in Children of Dune, when Leto goes and covers himself in sand trout, which are juvenile sandworms, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is when he chooses godhood over humanity for himself. This is his part of the golden path, is what he calls it. It's the one through line through the darkness of a million, billion, infinite different ways that humanity could go extinct and live in suffering and then all die. This is the one way that people can survive, that humanity can survive, is if he does this right now. And he realizes Paul had the same choice, and he chose not to. This comes to a head immediately afterwards, because guess who Leto meets in the desert, except for the prophet. That's right. And he says, "Hey, Dad, how's it going?" And Prophet's
And
like,
we will be right back after a message from our sponsors with the rest of that story.
and we're back.
Yeah, sorry, buddy.
So-
Will was a little pee-pee monster. He had to go pee. So
Yeah, Will got so fed up with our discussion of Dune that he decided to walk over to his kitchen, dice some onions, rub them in his eyes for a little bit, just to feel something again. And you know what? That's okay. All
I
right?
normally
Let men be men.
cut onions after they're in the refrigerator, which is way easier, by the way. If you refrigerate your onions, they will not attack you the way they did me. I was screaming at them that I felt like I was protesting the Vietnam War because I was crying so much my nose was running. It was an absolute ordeal. But still, these carnitas tacos are going to be worth it. I have a piece of pork shoulder in the oven. It's been there for like 5 or 6 hours.
I have had
Have
your
you ever-
pork shoulder carnitas. They're so
have
good.
you ever made? Yeah, they were delicious. Have you ever made birria?
No, I've never given that a shot.
It's so delicious. It's better than carnitas, bro. It's so good.
I mean, I've certainly had it. Yeah, it's great. The few there in a uniquely Southern California thing is birria ramen. And
Ooh,
in the places that
that'd be
do
good.
that well, it's really good.
Mhm.
Here,
It'll
Jamie,
make
pull
you
up a
feel like
picture
you're
of birria
dying.
ramen.
It probably will, in fact, kill you through just the
pulling it up,
oiliness
Thomas.
and so forth. But yeah, it tastes absolutely amazing. But
Oh my
No,
God,
I've
that
never
thing's
tried to
gonna
make
clog your
birria.
arteries.
I've given up. I'm not worried about my arteries. It's mostly
All right.
mostly the salt. You know, you eat a certain meal
Here.
and you feel like you're about to just fall
Here's our
over.
thumbnail clip.
Oh shit. Okay. For a second, I thought I closed Riverside while Thomas is slowly smiling.
You guys
But
think I'm
luckily-
putting this on the internet?
You're putting this on History of Philosophy Archive, motherfucker. With Thomas's gigantic red screaming face as the thumbnail.
I am starting to disassociate. I'm starting to think to myself like,
All right,
I'm not here. This isn't happening.
Well,
let's bring it
unfortunately,
back.
you are here. And let's talk a little
Let's-
bit about the
Let's
preacher.
bring it back. Let's bring it back. So, where we left off, Leto II had escaped from captivity with Gurney Halleck after undergoing the spice trance, which caused him to gain prescience. So, at this
Mhm.
point, Leto II, fully prescient. He has all of the same abilities as his father, Paul, and he can see every timeline. He understands how all of his actions are affecting the future in every possible capacity. He can sort of see into the future of the fourth dimension, right? I mean, the way that it's described in the books is sort of like you have this vision of a web of possible futures and causes and effects and that sort of thing. So he goes into the desert after having basically attached all of these juvenile sandworms, the sand trout, to his skin and fused with them. Like, he doesn't just like Band-Aids, right? He
Mhm.
fuses with them. They have these little, it's super gross. They have these little like cilia fingerly pokey things, like think about like a hard, like your
I think
intestines or
cilia is a
something,
pretty
right?
good way to put it.
Yeah, they've got cilia on them. That's how the book describes it. They have all the cilia covering the entire bottom, and he wraps them around them, and he feels their cilia embed in his flesh as he fuses with them.
Can we not
No.
make the visceral detail?
Shut
No,
up.
this is super important.
Stop
I
talking.
mean, this is
in the words of my
this
niece.
is what the stop
Stop speaking,
stop
Will.
talking. Stop speaking. Okay. Dune experts are speaking. Sit and listen. Okay.
Yeah.
Hold space for
Yeah.
white men who talk about
Will,
Dune.
sit
okay?
your white ass down and listen, okay?
Yeah, that's right.
My white ass is sad, and I am listening.
Okay, tell us
Good.
about the conversation between Leto and the preacher, Thomas.
Yes. So he's covered himself in these sandworms, which gives him impermeability. It gives him super speed, super strength. It's basically a built-in still suit, so he's not affected by the sun of Arrakis. And this motherfucker puts he fuses them to his flesh, and then just like Superman leaps and sprints at hundreds of miles an hour over the desert surface. It's fucking awesome.
It's
like
so
for
sick.
a book, dude, for a book that is mostly just like people talking. Okay, to be fair, Children of Dune is pretty action packed, but for what is essentially a lot of this political maneuvering, then a dude just like gets superpowers and he's like, he's he gets superpowers. He can see the future and he's like, I'm gonna fuck everything up for everybody and I'm gonna do it my way.
And the
And
first
then
thing he starts doing is destroying the terraforming machines. That's really what he starts doing with his powers. Because he realizes he's like, we need these cool ass worms. We can drive them around the desert and park them next to our sietches. And
you need a nature preserve for Shai Hulud.
Exactly.
Yeah. And he does, actually, funny enough. But yeah, so he's running across the desert. He finds the preacher, who turns out is his father. And you have this really great scene where he basically is like, fuck you, Dad. I chose godhood. You chose humanity. I'm in charge now. And it's really great. It's a super fun scene where Paul is this like shriveled, blind old man who just couldn't face he couldn't face the decision that it would take, because the implication of putting the sand trout becoming one, merging with them, being symbiotic with them, means becoming a sandworm, right? Like a whole ass sandworm, and Paul knew that. And he declined to do that. He chose the path of humanity. Leto chose
this is
the
why
path
he
of godhood.
blinded himself, so
yes,
that he wouldn't have to see this.
No, it is, man. He blinded himself and exiled himself into the desert so he didn't have to choose the option that is becoming an
abomination,
horrifying monster. Yeah, not an abomination, but a horrifying monster of a sandworm.
Outside of the context of Dune, an abomination.
Yeah, right. And so he runs into his dad and he's like, okay, I'm in charge now. I have control of all the prescience now, and you're on my side. We're gonna go fuck shit up back at the capital city of Arrakeen and we're gonna do it right now. So this comes to the climax of the story, right? So this is the classic Frank Herbert move where everybody shows up. Any character who was even briefly mentioned shows up for the climax, and it's a fucking blast. If they're alive and breathing, they show up for the cookout, and that's taking place at the Citadel on Arrakeen. Richard, can you give us like the play-by-play on the climax?
Let's go
of the book?
So,
let's do it.
At this point, Ghanima believes that Leto II is dead. Aaliyah knows that he's not, and she's kind of scared. She arranges, earlier on in the story, we mentioned Faradine, who is the son of Will's favorite character, Wincesia, of House Carino, and they are getting married. And Paul hops up on Leto II and drives his son Worm all the way over to the marriage. They show up and reveal themselves. Ghanima, upon seeing Leto, has her memories restored. There is a big scuffle, and at some point, Aaliyah's agents kill Paul, which, let's be real, Paul was like, thank God. Thank God I can die, finally.
He walks up onto the temple steps and starts screaming about... he starts calling out Aaliyah personally and being like, you fucking suck. You're not a fucking god. You're fucking nothing. And she's
You're
like,
a bonehead.
She's like, yeah. She's like, all right, kill him. And they fucking murder him. They murder Paul Muad'Dib on the steps of his own temple in a very poetic ending. And thank God he finally died, because he had a horrible life. He was a fucking miserable bastard and for so long.
Yep.
But yeah.
He's a man who saw too much.
Yep, and then Aaliyah has her Lord Farquaad moment where she looks at Leto II and is like, "Seize him!" And Leto II.
No, you're missing the best part, actually. So Leto shows up.
Is it when Leto II picks her up and starts tossing her around?
No, dude, before that. So she's like locked herself in the throne room of the Citadel, and Leto's showing up and he like knocks on the door. She's like, "Don't open the door, keep it locked." So this fucking 9-year-old punches these like 100-ton doors. He punches them open. He just goes, boom! Like straight up, the motherfucker gets superpowers, and
he gets full Space Marine.
It's like Herbert describes in detail how big these doors are and how far they go flying when he just punches them. He has not ungodly, godly strength at this point to just break shit. blasts open these doors, walks up, grabs Aaliyah, who at this point has been, who is like fully consumed by the ego of Baron Harkonnen. Like for a while now, she has been paranoid. She's been freaked out. She's Baron Harkonnen. And he grabs her by the feet and fucking spins her around in this greatest fucking moment.
Humiliating her.
Humiliating her.
He picks
It's
her up and
hilarious
swings
to do
her
this.
around.
Yeah.
Like a baby. He just swings
Like a
her
hammer
around.
throw, like just like
Yeah,
round in
dude.
circles. Yeah.
Yeah.
He grabs her by the sides and he gives her uppies and everything to humiliate her in front of the entirety of mankind. And at some point he puts her down and pats her on the head and is like, "Hey, listen, I know we got some bad blood. I know shit got pretty weird between us, but I am so insanely powerful, I could straight up exorcise the Baron out of you." And the Baron freaks out and throws her right off the balcony to her death. So Aaliyah leaps off and dies of a broken heart and also maybe thousands of feet in smashing into the ground. And then Leto comes back and is like, "Hey, everybody, it's me again, Leto the Second. Much like my father, I'm in charge now. I'm your new god." And then he does a couple of things. So Faradine,
Let's break it down.
Yeah. So Faradine, the son of Princess Wincesia, at some point gets converted to the Bene Gesserit cause by Jessica. So he is on their side. He's a good egg. We like Faradine. And so Leto II decides, in order to consolidate power, he marries his twin Ganima, but not in a weird way, just in a political way. And then he elects.
It's a political way, which is weird for
it is,
modern
but also Will.
But
something that Will's really going to like because he's a sex weirdo is that Leto II doesn't have genitalia anymore, and so
I can't believe you just out me like that. Jesus.
Yeah, because Will is a sex pest, he'll like this part. And what happens is Leto II elects Faradine to effectively be the consort of Ganima. That way they can continue the Atreides line, which Leto II is now incapable of doing. Now that that's been shored up, he once again elects himself emperor, and things are going to get really good for everybody in the next book, which we should step into now.
The end, and that's the end of the book. I mean, it's a typical Herbert fashion. The book wraps up in like one chapter. The climax is like 20 pages where all of this shit goes down. Paul dies, Aaliyah dies, Leto becomes emperor, Faradine marries his sister, and Leto II doesn't have genitals anymore. And he says, "I'm the God Emperor now." And we do things a little differently around here, actually. We're going to do things a little differently. And that's where the book ends. And it's a great it's a wonderful setup for God Emperor of Dune. Yeah, it is really badass too. It's a lot of fun.
A couple of things before we go into God Emperor of Dune. Responding to what you just said about how the conclusion happens in the last 20 pages, that's pretty much how, like, it just wraps up real quick. That's pretty much how every one of Frank Herbert's books ends. And it's because I get the impression that Frank Herbert loves his own world that he created and loves hanging out with it. And there's a point every single time he's writing these books where he's like 400 pages in and he's like, "God damn it has to end at some point." I wish I could. I wish I could write 1,200 pages. Like
he's like, "We got to wrap." His editor's like, "We got to wrap this up, man. Come on."
Yeah, and
you can feel the part of the manuscript where he hit the deadline.
I also keep in mind too. I actually just read this today. I didn't know this, but I think a lot of his books, and Children of Dune for sure, but probably the other ones too, were actually written as serials in various magazines. I forget which ones off the top of my head, but that used to be the style where it's like, if you're a sci-fi writer, you write a chapter a month or something like that, submit it to a magazine, and they publish it as a continuing series. And then at some point he's just like, "Okay, we're closing that one out, and we got to make it fit in the space of one magazine," right? And so that they can put on the title, "The Thrilling Conclusion to the Children of Dune," right? And then it has to fit into whatever you can print in a magazine, and then you can go and work on the next one. That's kind of my theory about it. But it's weird.
Yeah, I don't actually know if children, because I know that was the case for Dune, and I'm pretty sure it was the case for Messiah. I don't know if that was the case for children.
It was. Yeah,
What I
it
do,
was.
yeah,
I,
what
I
I do
just read
know.
it.
Okay, yeah, there we go. I'm not doubting you. I just don't actually know. What I do know is that Frank Herbert was after he finished Children of Dune, he initially considered that to be the end of Dune. He wanted it to be a trilogy. But he had this nagging voice in the back of his head, a certain little worm worming its way into his brain. And
It's too
he
many
decided,
worms. It's too many worms.
there's no such thing as
It's
too many worms,
weird.
Will.
They've gone from scenery to plot devices to characters to the main character. There's a real worm obsession happening
Well,
here.
and you're right. And you know what? Much like you, Will, Frank Herbert couldn't get enough of the worm. And that's where
Yeah.
God Emperor of Dune happens.
He loved the worm.
He
Let's pick it up with God Emperor of Dune.
Let's do it. Thomas,
Let's
how many
fucking
years in
do
the
it,
future
man.
have we traveled now?
3,500, give or take.
And are
All
things
of
cool?
the other ones have time skips 10 to 20 years. This one's 3,500 years.
How's the
Fuck it.
galaxy
Who
looking,
cares
Thomas?
anymore?
So three millennia of worm guy Leto II
Yep.
running
Yes.
shit and being in charge.
In the
Okay.
interim, Leto has transformed into a massive sandworm. He calls it his pre-worm body because he's not fully sandworm. He is a giant worm with like a human face grafted onto the side and stubby little arms and stubby little legs.
Is it like, here's the part that freaks me out about this image. Is this like a regular sized person stuck into the side of a giant worm?
It's not clear about it. Funny enough.
Or is
never
this like
actually
a large proportionate thing? There's no proportion
Unclear.
that makes it not scary.
Yeah,
but
there's no
yeah.
proportion that makes it not scary, but
The
the
only
book is
proportion-
specifically vague about it.
The only proportion you get is that he's like roughly 30 feet tall at this
Yes.
point. But outside of that,
Yeah.
it
The
describes
worm
what he
or
looks.
the human
They are one and the same.
protrusion?
Yeah.
So Will,
Yeah.
I've seen some fan art, and here's how I like to look at it.
God.
So imagine a 30-foot tall worm when it inches its little earthworm body upwards and stands upright. It opens its mouth, and it mentions that he still has his little arms, he still has his little head and body, and it mentions that what used to be his legs are now these tiny little flippers that stand outside the carapace. So he is basically, I'd like to imagine the upper torso of a man falling out of a worm's mouth, basically.
I mean, this is basically whales and dolphins. I mean, those were just the lizards that crawled back into the sea, you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah.
And
I'm gonna post an image here. This is the cover of
I think I know exactly what you're thinking of.
Yeah. This is the cover. If you want to look it up, just Google search God Emperor of Dune. It's like the fourth result. It's the cover of the book shows an artist representation of what Leto II looks like, but there are a lot of other.
Yeah.
let's
is-
see this thing.
It's like a
It's not so
man.
bad.
It's like a man trapped in a worm sarcophagus.
It's
Okay.
Well, because I mean, think about it this way: the book goes into pretty great detail about what has actually happened to Leto
Mhm.
over 3,000 years, where him and these sand trout have been growing symbiotically, right? Like they have been expanding and growing together, where they've merged into one organism, right? They've covered his skin. It says in Children of Dune that he specifically has like certain trout that can cover his face like a flap, and then it covers, and it also says that too in God Emperor of Dune. He still has a sort of face flap that he can remove. So
Yeah,
it's
this is all very awesome, but can we go past the physical description that's been going on for 10 minutes now?
We're going to talk about it for the next 2 hours, and then maybe it will cover like the story of the book. That's right. No, but
this is Ken Burns, the worm. Okay.
The point is that the book is actually not as specific as it is about what happens. It's not descriptive. It's not quite descriptive enough to say like precisely what he looks like. Suffice to say, he's a big fucking worm,
what a tragedy.
and he rides around.
What a tragedy! There isn't a more detailed description.
Yeah, I know. Oh,
yeah.
At the end of the book, you get a very detailed description, which we'll get to.
One last thing.
Yeah.
before we move on to the plot, is that he's this massive worm, but also when he's in his Imperial Palace, he has, you know how in the Clone Wars and stuff, Yoda has his little floating seat?
Yeah, yeah,
Yoda basically has like a little hover chair he hangs out in. And
yeah.
Leto the Second has his big old worm seat where he parks his big ass worm body and it just kind of like carries him around. He's got his mobility
Yep.
scooter that
He's got his
takes him
mobility
around.
scooter. Yeah, he's Emperor Palpatine, 30-foot worm mobility scooter. That's the
Uh-huh.
picture.
How do you make a chair for a worm? It's just a weird
Very
geometric.
Advanced engineering. It
coils.
also has a yeah. He coils up on it, and
Okay.
they call it the royal cart, and it has a like and it has a giant bubble around it because part of the physiology of sandworms is that they're very sensitive to water and moisture in the air,
And
and
that'll
so
be
he has
important
a
later.
yeah, yes, it will. He has an airtight bubble that he can surround his cart with that he moves around on it. So,
Yep. You
Okay.
could
anyhow,
say he is quite literally snug as a bug.
So he's got
he's
his
quite
little.
literally.
He's not as little. He's got his big ass Pope mobile. You know, just like fully bubbled, right? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Now, Thomas,
it is. It's a Pope mobile for sure.
Thomas, I think it's time for us to talk about 3,500 years later, what the Empire
Right.
looks like. Can I go into that for a moment? So,
Yeah, Richard.
oh yeah.
Don't let me
Have the
stop you, my
taxes
friend.
increased?
Oh, the taxes have increased more than you could possibly believe. So, at certain points during this book, a lot of what this book is it's almost like the memoirs of a worm. It's this
a lot of
ancient.
talking.
It's a lot of talking and a lot of Leto the Second reflecting on what the golden path is, but not fully. It's a lot of wink wink towards the audience because he doesn't fully elaborate on what the golden path is until the end. All you know is that 3,500 years later, humanity has basically encountered a dark age by design. Leto II has monopolized the spice, so there is little to no space travel at all. Most of mankind is trapped on their own planets, and technologically, they've almost gone back to the medieval era. By every metric, Leto II is a horrible tyrant who most people live in fear of. Also, the Fremen military has been mostly disbanded and replaced by what Leto would like to call, Leto II, the fish speakers, which the fish speakers are an all-female legion that he commands. And in another example of like weird 70s sci-fi gendered stuff, he's like, yes, having an all-female army is superior because females are less dominated by their emotions than men.
Yeah,
Which,
and
okay.
and when you have male, and he specifically makes a point of one of the characters talks to one of the Duncan Idahos at this point, and he goes, "Yeah, I mean the problem with male armies is that they're too gay. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I'm talking about? Like late night in the barracks, you've been training all night. It gets kind of gay in there, man." And Duncan's like, "What are you talking about? It's not that gay. No, it's not gay being comrades with your homies. No." And he gets all fucking offended. But then he admits, he's like, "I mean, yeah, it's kind of gay, but like not really, man." By the way,
People
I will
listening,
mention
it's 1970. Oh wait, Thomas, tell
by the
Will
way,
about why Duncan Idaho's still here.
I'll get to it, but I gotta make the
Right
caveat.
now. God.
Frank Herbert is like a notorious homophobe. I think like
Yeah,
there's been a lot of
really
discussion.
unfortunate.
Oh,
Yeah,
he is?
like,
That's
there's-
not just for laughs? Oh, that sucks.
No, well, no. I mean, listen, I'll be honest. Like in that section of the book where he's talking, like we has one character speaking to Duncan Idaho about like, yeah, here's why we have like an all female army because it's not gay. Well, he's not. I'm being facetious here. He's not saying it's because they're gay. He's saying it's because it's adolescent, right? Like when you've got all these dudes, you've got all this like, you know, juvenile camaraderie which leads to abuse of powers and all of this sort of stuff. It's not strictly homosexual, but notoriously like one reading of like Baron Harkonnen, the book version of Baron Harkonnen in the first Dune book is that like he like first of all he is an Epstein level fucking pedophile, and it is disgusting. And Herbert, I mean, he spares details, but not a lot. He makes it very clear that that he is a disgusting pedophile homosexual, and it is gross as fuck. And Frank Herbert's got a lot of that homophobia baked into that too. So just to be
Well, the
clear,
unfortunate
audience,
truth.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
he's writing
also,
a bad character, and he's like, let me put all of the bad... He's writing a bad guy. Let me put all of the things that I think are bad. Well, pedophilia is bad. Homosexuality is bad. He's all of... And, you know, greed and gluttony. He's super fat and disgusting. He's like, all of these are bad characteristics. This is what the character is. Doesn't age well. Not exactly what we would...
I think there will have to be a newly added original gay storyline for Timothy Chalamet in Dune 3, just to balance the cosmic scales on this issue.
Oh my god, they should.
It needs to.
I would love that.
That is...
Producers hear my cry. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. We will move on from this, but also we shouldn't pull our punches. Frank Herbert, despite being a visionary fiction writer, was a fucking asshole. For example, Frank Herbert had two sons, Brian and Bruce Herbert. We always hear about Brian Herbert because he wrote a bunch of shitty fan fiction for Dune. You don't hear that much about Bruce Herbert. Bruce Herbert was a homosexual, and he was largely discarded by Frank Herbert in a pretty cruel way. And the thing is, after Frank Herbert died, Brian did talk about his father. And Brian loved Frank Herbert, even though he was a terrible father. But he did acknowledge that his father was a dictator. The thing that I think why it's worth talking about God Emperor of Dune is because Frank Herbert's Leto II. Frank Herbert is that... While Frank Herbert likes to say that his stand-in is Stilgar, the wise Fremen father figure, it wasn't. He was Leto II, a man who invented a future that he saw was certain and brutally and unemotionally saw it through. And it is unfortunate because it's heartbreaking because I love his stories. But much like J.K. Rowling, who also wrote stories that were near and dear to me when I was a child, eventually you find out that you should never have heroes and that everybody sucks, including Frank Herbert.
Yep.
Yeah, that part in Harry Potter where Hermione actually gets like mercilessly teased for opposing slavery with the goblins or whatever they are. Dobby's
the house elves, which is even worse. They call them the house elves.
Yeah, Hermione starts a lone crusade to get rid of house elf slavery, and is just across the board mocked and ultimately
she's like
fails.
Ridiculed for even considering the fact that enslaving a sentient species is not cool. I don't know. Yeah. Well, I will say, like, I think, and I'm with you, Richard. I mean, it's like there is the reality of the author being, you know, having major faults and flaws. Of course, I just mentioned a number of them. And I don't disagree with them entirely, but I will say the thing in your comparison with Rowling, I think the benefit that Herbert has is a really deep understanding of the telling of history and the telling of stories in a way that Rowling kind of doesn't. I mean, you read Harry Potter and it's like, yeah, I mean, they're fun adventure books sometimes, but she obviously misses the mark so fucking hard on pretty obvious parallels that exist in her, like on pretty obvious points that exist in her own writings, where it's like you didn't see that, and you just didn't even think about it. Herbert knows. Like, Herbert is far more intelligent, I think, than Rowling in specifically that way, and it makes it really hard to be, you know.
The books are organized around different like centers. I mean, Harry Potter is a book about growing up and going to school and finding out that the world is bad and deciding to do something about it. And it takes place in a world of, you know, magic and so forth. Whereas Dune is a guy, you know, doing a lot of coke at 1 a.m, going, what would it be like if there was a planet made out of DMT? These are just very different approaches to making a book. Sure. Yeah. Anyhow,
all of that aside, you know, there exists a lot of fair critiques of Frank Herbert as a person and as an author. Fully accept that. I still love the book.
I was about to say.
What can I say?
it was important for us to go on that tangent because we do not
Yeah.
endorse his personal and like choices as an individual, but we can get back into the story because I think that the story exists outside of Frank Herbert's personal faults. And
Well,
it
yeah.
is a really interesting reflection on the possible future of mankind, and also an interesting reflection on the history of mankind up until now.
The unholy
Yes.
temptation of power.
Exactly.
Man,
The
yeah.
satanic majesty of becoming a 3,500-year-old worm.
It's true, dude. It's so true. Let's pick it up here. I'm gonna say this right now. I guess is better than never. God Emperor of Dune is kind of a hard book to talk about. For a number of reasons. It falls kind of in the Dune Messiah camp in a big way, probably even egregiously so. Of basically nothing happens for the entire book. Like really, there's no action. There's no characters going around and doing things. I will say that basically every other chapter is Leto II, the God Emperor worm, sitting on his little fucking cart in his little fucking throne room, talking to some moronic mortal who doesn't understand the Golden Path, and he's sitting there mocking them for not understanding the Golden Path. Like every other fucking
Don't you
chapter.
get it? You should be happy for me.
Will, you need to understand so much of this book is
I thought you wanted
to
support me on my journey.
So much of this book, and by the way, we're underselling it because it is actually interesting and entertaining.
Of course,
so much of this
it's a great book.
So much of this book are little mortal peasants running in front of this giant 30-foot worm as he prophesizes in front of them, and they're holding their face in their hands like, "What are you saying to me? What does any of this mean? You gigantic worm freak!"
It is a lot of just arcane monologuing from a 3,500-year-old god worm thing that used to be a person. It's really interesting and it's engaging, but that's most of the book. And I mean, there's only so much you can talk about it. I mean, okay, all right.
Well,
let's talk about what the fuck actually. Let's talk about what actually happens. Talk about it, Richard, please.
Okay, so locking into the plot, we're gonna flex our huge muscles because, audience, if you don't know, we're all absolutely jackhammered alpha males. So, at some point in the future, there are another civilization that is under the Empire called the Ixians. Now, the Ixians are one of many different factions and characters in this book thinking to themselves, how in the name of God do we get rid of this absolutely demented Hitler-like deity that has all of us pushed underneath his thumb? And the Ixians...
It's a good question. It's a really good question.
Yeah,
it's a great question.
Ixians,
yeah.
I wake up every day with this question, actually.
And the Ixians come up with an idea, which they're like, well, we don't really know how tempted he is with the temptations of the flesh, but we're going to try it anyways. So they genetically engineer a diplomat named Hui Nori in order to, from top to bottom, they design her intellectually and physically to be somebody that the God Emperor, Leto II, could fall in love with. And they succeed. Now, the thing about Leto II is that he is surrounded by rebels. He is surrounded by people that want to betray him, but he's the God Emperor. He knows everything that's going to happen. In fact, he even reflects at some point and says, rebels are my favorite humans because they're the most useful to me. And so he ultimately alludes to the fact, wink, wink, that a lot of these rebellions and these plans may even succeed, but it's all a part of the Golden Path, Will. You cannot escape the Golden Path. And so another character I want to introduce. So let's bear in mind we have Hui Nori.
Let's introduce the full cast really quick so we don't get it confused.
Yeah, I'll make it happen fast.
Key players. Yeah.
So in Children of Dune, Ghanima ends up marrying Faradine. One of their longtime descendants is now the advisor to Leto II, which is mostly a ceremonial role. His name is Moneo Atreides. He is a big deal. Moneo is based. We love Moneo. Moneo has a child named, it's right here, Siona. And Siona is a rebel. Siona is somebody who is plotting against Leto II. Siona is somebody who is deeply involved in the attempt to dethrone him. And once again, Leto II loves Siona because she is another piece of the chessboard that could be manipulated around. Now, Leto II does fall in love with Hui, this genetically engineered diplomat. And it's kind of funny, Will, because there are some moments where you realize that Leto II he's not just a worm, he's a goth worm. He's a very emotional worm who has been deprived of love. He's so sad.
Yeah, he has a really sensitive side.
He's a sad boy, big time. He's a sad boy.
He's also cucked so hard by Duncan Idaho. So Duncan Idaho.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, dude, we gotta fuck. Okay, now let me talk about Duncan Idaho.
Okay.
So I'm gonna run down. You know, we sort of alluded to this earlier in the episode. Here's the story. In the course of 3,500 years, Leto II, Worm God Emperor, has continually requested new Golas, so like clones essentially, of Duncan Idaho. So he knew the clone Duncan Idaho, the Gola Duncan Idaho growing up, who was married to Aaliyah, and at some point that Duncan Idaho died. He's got a normal human lifespan. So he tells the Tleilaxu, or the Beni Tleilax, he goes, I want another one. And that guy shows up, he acts as an advisor.
Again! Him!
Then he dies. Leto II, basically, he is immortal. Or, he doesn't age in that sense, right? And he has a worm's lifespan. So that first Duncan Idaho dies. He goes, give me another one. They give him another one. He dies. Another one. I don't know does the book say how many Duncan Idahos there's been? There's been hundreds. Hundreds of Duncan Idahos. And the process of, so every single fucking one of them have been through the cloning vats and the emotionally traumatizing process of being forced to kill Paul Atreides, which, if you remember from Dune Messiah, was the key to them having all of their memories. So hundreds and hundreds of times over, Duncan Idaho has woken up in a vat, been forced to kill his beloved Paul Atreides, refuses to do it, gains all of his memories back, and the Tleilaxu were like, great. Okay, you remember who you are? You are now the servant of the God Emperor, Paul's son, Leto II. By the way, it's been 1,500, 2,000, 3,500 years since you died. Just FYI. Yeah, and they send him off to him.
And now your beloved Paul's son is a giant fucking worm.
Yeah, by the way, heads up. And so God Emperor of Dune doesn't really have a strict protagonist. If any, it would be, listen, it doesn't have a strict protagonist. The main characters are obviously Duke Leto, God Emperor Leto II. We spend a ton of time with him. There's the Gola Duncan Idaho, and then there's Siona. Those are like the three main lenses that we view the story through. Duncan Idaho is very much like a man out of time. He's sort of he's an honorable, stalwart dude, which is why Leto likes to keep they always refer to him as one of the Duncan Idahos, or he's a Duncan Idaho, which is sort of kind of horrifying to consider.
He's an action figure for Leto II.
Yeah, pretty much. He just likes keeping him around. He's like, I think you're really cool. And he specifically says that, the Paul Muad'Dib Atreides ego that lives in my brain just kind of likes having you around, and it keeps him quiet if there's a Duncan Idaho around. So we're going to have a Duncan Idaho. Keep him quiet. Keep him happy. And as a matter of fact, so
this is Jason Momoa in the movies, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
he's
by the way,
in it for the long haul.
By the way, Will, I know that you're probably shaking your head and thinking like, wow, Richard and Thomas have just completely delved into chaotic ranting. That is what God Emperor of Dune is.
That's what God Emperor of Dune is. It's pretty insane.
That being said, I think that I can deliver the plot forward a bit. So,
sure,
we've set up our characters. The main one being Siona Atreides, the son of Mineo, the advisor who's in on these rebellions. Now, at some point, something that everybody should know about Arrakis is even though in the previous book, Leto II destroyed a bunch of the terraforming machines, eventually he realized that in order to keep mankind under his thumb, he had to once again reduce the spice. So at this point, Arrakis is almost entirely terraformed, but Leto II has a fortress that exists on sort of a preserve of desert. This long area where he can run around whenever he gets tired. And this isn't a joke. Whenever he gets tired or whenever he has too much energy, he delves into the dunes and just starts running through them to tire himself out. When he gets what's the zoomies, as some would say.
Yeah, he does get the God Emperor does get the zoomies, and yes,
Yeah.
he does heave his massive worm body through an entire desert. It's very fun.
I mean, this is like the childish need to like dive into a ball pit or to crawl through the sand
He
at the
indulges
beach.
in it, and he tries to not let him. He specifically says he doesn't. He tries to not indulge himself as much as he can, so it can be a special treat for him. He likes to
Exactly.
Retirement really is just second childhood, you know.
Well, and bear in mind that Leto II was like 9 or 10 years old when he became God, and that 9-year-old is still kind of there. So at some point, once again, part of his plan, he's like, "Hey, Siona, come over here. I want to chit chat with you." And she says, "What do you want to do?" And he said, "Let's just go on a little journey in the desert for a moment." And she's like, "All right." So he drops his big fat ass worm body out of his citadel and travels around with Siona. And at a certain point, another thing is he gives Siona a still suit, the thing that the Fremen used to wear in order to stay safe in the desert. But he's a little rat bastard. He's a sneaky little worm. So what he does is he gives her an intentionally broken still suit. And so they're traveling. Thomas, you'll recognize this in a moment. He gives her an intentionally broken still suit. So as they're traveling through the desert, a giant sandstorm comes. And naturally, it starts messing her up because her still suit's broken. And Leto II says, "Hey, come into my carapace. Hide in one of the folds of my carapace, and you can be protected. Don't worry, it does get weird, but not in the way that you think." He says, hide in the folds of my carapace, and you'll be safe. So she climbs in between one of the discs, and he's like, "You must be thirsty for water because your still suit doesn't work. Why don't you drink of my spice-infused water in my body?" Thomas, you know what I'm talking about now?
Yeah. Well, I will say he
up?
doesn't. I'm gonna clarify. I don't think you might be mistaken. He doesn't give her an intentionally damaged still suit, but what it is he gives her fully functioning, like at this point, a relic, like an artifact level still suit, because no one's needed a still suit on Arrakis in literally millennia, but he has some kicking around still. He gives her one, but obviously she's not trained in all of the what they call museum Fremen ways, and she doesn't remember. She doesn't put the mouth flap over her face. So as they're traveling through the desert together, she is losing water and doesn't realize it. And Leto is like, "Oh boy, I hope she remembers to cover the flap on her face," but he also knows like she's not gonna do it. Eventually she does remember, but it's too late because she doesn't have enough extra water, and so he has to feed her the spice scoop, suckle from the teat of the giant worm, and things get a little trippy.
The long story short is that she absorbs water.
Why is
I was
he
literally
doing
about
this?
to say.
We're about to get there. Yeah, this is the point.
Bear in mind, there's a heavily limited amount of spice in the universe, so the average person is no longer taking it like they used to. So she goes in and she will look me in the eyes, suckles from the teat of the godworm.
Right, we've said that. Yep.
Because of that, she starts tripping balls on spice. And even though she's been a rebel this entire time, suddenly she sees the golden path, or at least what Leto II wants her to see of it. Because this is all leading to something. Now, she starts to see it, and suddenly she's no longer a rebel. She understands Leto II and what the mission is, which the end point of the mission, by the way, has been kept mostly, behind the curtain for the audience.
Yeah,
at least.
He's been really vague. Herbert is so fucking vague about what the Golden Path is. It's the fucking pivotal. The Golden Path as an idea is pivotal to understanding God Emperor of Dune. He never fully explains it, but he sort of explains it like in the last, I don't know, 3 fucking pages of the 400 fucking page book. He finally gets there.
let's get to those last pages. So what ends up happening is Leto II arranges a marriage between him and Hui, the Ixian diplomat that was designed specifically for him. And guess what, Will? Throughout the book, a lot of people speculate whether or not the God Emperor has genitalia or not. This is important. And they speculate, and he finds it highly amusing. At some point, God Emperor Leto II says, I love how they speculate if I have any genitalia. Maybe I should form a gross protuberance for them to entertain
Maybe I should have a gross protuberance.
The epitome of
on my
no
warm
one
body.
asked. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. A whole lot of people asked during the book.
Everyone
Yeah.
wants to
Frank
know
Herbert
if the
invented people to ask this question so he could answer it. Yeah.
And so
Oh, yeah.
there are these moments where, he's talking to Hui and he's saying like, I know it must be hard to love somebody like me when I look like this. And she's like, well, you've got a good personality. But ultimately, what happens, Will, is that she ends up banging Duncan Idaho, which makes Leto II. Will's mouth is hanging open. Audience,
it's a great personality, but boy, your militia commander's hot. And
But
he has
boy,
a
Jason
penis.
Momoa, dude, have you seen that guy?
Yeah, I know.
She's like,
it's a really hard choice between a freakish anthro worm or Jason Momoa, but yeah.
Yeah, no. At some point, Duncan Idahos throws a football at the back of Leto II's head. But anyways,
Never the same after that.
Yeah, so Leto is the most cuck worm about in the galaxy, but eventually he sets up a wedding with Hui. And this is very important to the Golden Path. So what ends up happening is they're originally going to have a wedding at the palace. But for some reason, Leto II says, no. I don't want to have my wedding at the palace. I want my wedding to be on part of the royal road that leads to the palace at a town called Tuono. So they end up having their wedding, much in Frank Herbert fashion. Everybody's at the cookout. Everybody's there. And they start to cross this bridge. Now, we mentioned before that sand trout and sandworms are highly sensitive to water. In fact, there is a moment where there's a little bit of rain while Leto II is talking to Siona, and she's kind of seeing the Golden Path, where it starts to singe his body. It burns him. And he's telling her that for a very specific reason. Now, at a certain point, Duncan Idaho and Siona start conspiring. Now, Duncan Idaho isn't necessarily in on why, but Siona says, hey, the worm god is going to cross this bridge over a river. If we shoot at the seams on the bridge, it will collapse, and that is the only way to kill Leto II. But he knows that. That is what he wants. Yeah.
So, long story short, they do that, and they kill him, and that's the end of the book.
Yeah, that's all that happens, Thomas.
I mean,
thanks, audience, for listening.
I don't want to tickle your balls any like Richard's doing here. That's the end of the book. Leto II dies, and a shit ton is revealed, and a shit ton goes on in between. Listen, for Will's sake and for the audience's sake, we're kind of skipping to the end here because, like we said, this book is mostly talking. There's stuff that happens where they travel, like the only one major event, the only time apart from the desert trip and when he dies that Leto leaves the cities, he goes to a festival grounds where some stuff happens. But I'll be honest, that's kind of none of that stuff is the interesting stuff, right? The interesting stuff is what's going on with Leto II. But yeah, keep going.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say that what I was going to switch that into was our final explanation of what the Golden Path truly was.
Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
We'll get there. So, Siona in on the Golden Path now, and as the audience, we still don't know, shoots the scaffolding, and the bridge collapses. And Leto, with his gigantic worm body, falls in the river and is like, and he starts burning and melting, and it's disgusting. Yeah. And
it
sand trout. It's disgusting. And sand trout.
The description he gives is horrifying.
Yeah. And sand trout, Hui ends up dying. Sand trout starts spilling out of Leto II, and he kind of washes up onto shore, where Duncan Idaho in a cave. And Duncan Idaho and Siona are there, and they talk to him. And with Leto II's dying breath, he explains the purpose of the Golden Path. So I mentioned before, up until this point, spice, basically interstellar travel has become non-existent. Humans have been stuck on their planets. But what Leto II explains is the reason why mankind, one thing that was happening during this time that was good is that there was relative peace with everybody. So the population density of all these planets was exploding. And
He
so
calls it
as
Leto's Peace specifically,
yeah,
sort of like Pax Romana or whatever. Like
yeah,
that's we I think after you kind of finish, we'll get into an analysis, a much deeper exploration of specifically Leto II, because that's that's the meat of the book. But the context for it is specifically that Leto had created an utterly peaceful universe with no one traveling to other planets to wage war on each other. Like everyone
mhm,
was relatively content,
yeah,
right? Things were fine,
yeah.
right?
Well,
There
and
was
also
no huge wars and people dying and shit. So he was
which
a tyrant,
allowed
but he enforced a peace.
yeah, well, which allowed mankind's population to grow drastically. Now, as he's explaining this, when the sand trout spill out of him, obviously sand trout are adolescent worms. So what he's doing is allowing these worms to go back out into the desert. Now, you end up, what he explains later the seconds to Duncan and Siona is the final component of the Golden Path, which he calls the scattering. So the point of the scattering is that in Children of Dune, Leto II has all these visions, like Thomas mentioned, this web of all of these millions of different ways that mankind goes extinct, and he sees one simple path. And the one simple path that he sees is mankind's population growing and growing and growing. And once they realize that they've been under his thumb, once they're able to do interstellar travel again, which they will when the worms go back out and start producing spice again, they will not only spread themselves across the galaxy, but across other galaxies. Mankind will become so common and prolific that they become immune to extinction. And that is the Golden Path. That was the purpose of everything Leto did, was to produce an adequate number of humans within 3,500 years, and then once all of that was done, let the despot die and give them the means to travel. Well, and also another thing to mention, one last thing, is that Siona was part of a very specific breeding program.
Well, here, let me, yeah.
You pick it up from here, Thomas.
I will say, this is, at this point, we kind of have to wrap this into some of the bigger picture stuff with Leto. So yes, you are correct in that sort of, that's the basic premise of what the Golden Path is. Leto chose the one path that doesn't result in the extinction of humanity, right? By having a large population, a high diversity of thoughts. I mean, very pro diversity sort of position to have, and then that they can spread across the planets and be more resistant, if not immune, to utter extinction. That's the purpose. That is fundamentally the purpose of the Golden Path, to prevent humanity from going extinct. There's a lot of different facets to it, though. So one, of course, is Leto's Peace. But I think, like, kind of the analysis of what Leto does is kind of bears discussion here, right? So I had mentioned briefly that, he has this enforced peace, right? There's no war anymore. He got rid of war. Everyone has enough to eat. No one's killing each other. Normally, that would be seen as a good thing, right? It's like, yeah, great. We've got a ruler who keeps the peace and keeps everybody fed. That's what you want, right? Yes and no, because he's also a despotic tyrant, and people fucking hate that. And it's sort of the classic, like, rebel against the system in that aspect. But he does a couple of other things too, and so this is kind of what Richard was driving at before. If you recall from our last episode, we talk about the Bene Gesserit having a breeding program, right? That was their reason to tear. Like, the whole purpose that they were doing anything was to create the Kwisatz Haderach.
I will
right?
say the amount of eugenics in this is certainly eyebrow raising. It seems to come up over and over and over,
Comes up a lot. Yeah, fascism, eugenics, it comes up. And what happens so at the end of Children of Dune, between Children of Dune and God Emperor of Dune, Leto II talks to the Bene Gesserit, and he's like, hey, listen, that's a cool breeding program you've got there. it's mine now. You're not allowed to like choose which, children will be born and from which noble bloodlines and blah blah blah. He goes, that's my thing now, and I'm gonna do it. So you don't need to worry about it, which pisses them off, but they can't do anything about it. And he basically makes a point of breeding the Atreides line over the course of 3 millennia, and originating from Ganima and Faradin, right, all the way down to Mineo, his advisor, and Siona, the Mineo's daughter, who he takes out into the desert, all the way down to them. And Siona is like, he has accomplished the goal of the breeding program in Siona. And specifically what that means is that he has created a being who is outside of what he calls the Oracle. She is invisible to him naturally from prescience. What he says is that when they walk through the desert, he reveals this. I don't know if he reveals this to her. He goes, I know she's there because I can see her footprints when I turn around, but I can't see her in my prescient visions. That's his goal. He's breaking this cycle of slavery to prescient vision and to ancestral memories. Siona says she says in the end of the book, sorry, my camera just died, in the cave with Leto, she goes, yes, I walk amongst my ancestors, but I am invisible from them. She is not constrained by this temporal prescience that affects them. Part of the framing material of this entire book is, okay, so there's some important framing for this book to mention. So interspersed between the chapters, there's little excerpts from the from Leto's diaries, because he's always writing. Every thought he has is recorded in his diaries, right? And so there's the view of archaeologists and historians, thousands of years in the future, reading through his old journals. That's sort of the like header for each chapter. And right at the end of the book, they say, yeah, there's this entire group of people who are basically free from prescient vision entirely, and they are the descendants of Siona, right? Essentially the descendants of Paul Atreides and Ganima and all of that stuff, and they have also spread across the galaxy, and that's another big goal of his breeding program. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Will, it's interesting that you mentioned that there's a lot of eugenics and fascist elements to this, which is completely correct. But that's part of the golden path. Is, in book one, we mentioned that...
that's also what the Nazis thought.
Well, I know. But the thing is that this is an example. What the Nazis didn't have, A, was empathy. They're horrible people. Hot take, they suck. But, ultimately, what led to all these eugenics was prescience. The Kitsak Haderach, Paul Atreides, was devastating to mankind. In a certain way, it's kind of like when machines became too advanced and they enslaved mankind. The Bene Gesserit very naively for a while thought that a human-led future would be different than that. But what these books explore is that the same sort of control and awfulness happens when you produce prescient godlike human beings. And so even though Leto II uses awful and, like you mentioned, fascist means to accomplish it, what Leto is doing is keeping mankind not dependent on machines, while also eliminating the same outcome for human beings genetically. That is why he produces this genetic code through his own breeding programs that allows people to function outside of prescience. His ultimate goal, outside of spreading mankind across the universe, was to eliminate prescience so humans can't control one another like the machines once controlled mankind. There is a method to the madness.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, sure. It's kind of a classic emancipatory thing, whether it's, breaking the wheels of fate or overthrowing God or, the singularity or whatever. It's like this this vision of transcendence where it's like, oh, we won't be bound by anything in the external world. People won't be able to fuck with each other in the future. And it's like, but how would that work? A future where people can't fuck with each other. People can always fuck with each other.
And I mean, and part of that, part of his goal from like a socio-political perspective is like, people hated him as a tyrant so much that it will be eons before they forget Leto the tyrant. But one day they will read all of his journals and realize that he was acting in the best interests of humanity by giving them a tyrant they would really hate, so they wouldn't have any other tyrants in the future. That's his thinking. The text sort of supports him by being like, yeah, dude, he's fucking prescient and wise and brilliant, and so of course that works. It's kind of hard to swallow, but that's what the text says.
Well, and bear in mind, Will, that there are 2 more books after this that we're not going to talk about, but like they're pretty solid. If for the audience, if you have felt inclined to read the series because of this, because of what we've talked about, or if you've already read books 1 through 4 and you didn't move on, if you are facing similar questions, this is like a helpline. If you have the same questions that Will does and the same stipulations, and you feel like it's incomplete, maybe read the next 2 books, because the next 2 books, much like every book before it, examines and recontextualizes the message of the books before it. A lot of what the next 2 books are is you still have, much like I was corrected in the comments, you have the honored Maters, who are an evolution
really
of the Bene
fucked
Gesserit.
That one up.
I fucked it up. Listen, audience, dox me and kill me in real life for saying that. But like, ultimately, a lot of the next 2 books they take place even further, thousands of years in the future, where Leto II is almost, they know that he existed, but he's almost more so a mythological figure or somebody that they question, rather than somebody that they see as like a present ruler or something that happened recently. And they ask themselves, and a lot of these factions in the following 2 books try to accomplish domination once again, and in ways that they don't even know. Leto II's decisions prevent them from doing it. And that's, if there was anything you can get from the next 2 books, it is basically seeing whether or not Leto II's plan worked. And in a strange way, it did. For example, like Leto II, all the sand trout come out of him. And eventually Arrakis once again becomes a desert world over time because people stop trying to terraform it. And one of the big questions in the series later is, did Leto II die, or does his consciousness live on in the worms and continue to influence the world?
Well, that's discussed in God Emperor of Dune. I mean, Leto basically says, which is kind of interesting. He goes, listen, I have become so symbiotic with the sand trout. He's like, he tells Mineo this. So much of the book is him just talking to his loyal lapdog Mineo about all of this bullshit that Mineo's like, yeah, I get it, but I am not a 3,000-year-old worm. Okay, thank you, bye. Fucking Mineo's such a good character. Anyhow,
he's so much fun.
He tells Mineo, he's like, listen, I'm so symbiotic with these worms is when I die, I am going to transform and I'm going to explode into a million billion tiny little sand trout adolescent worms. Every single one of them carries a fragment of my consciousness with them. So even when I die in this form, my consciousness will still live on, and it's probably not going to be very fun because it's going to be caught between waking and dreaming purgatory.
Okay, yes, this whole thing is just an ego trip. It is just, okay, I'm gonna make myself a king, and then I'm gonna have to make myself the emperor, and then I'll turn that down. But then my spirit will live on in this other person who will become a god emperor for 3,500 years. And then when I get bored of that, I will basically take myself out. But I won't be dead. I'll live forever in the panspermian, worm exodus from my decaying body, and it'll just be more of me, me. I'm great. I'm the god emperor.
Yeah. No, Leto is still a 9-year-old basically.
But my God.
I think that we can stop talking about Dune for a moment, and to conclude this episode, I think we should do a Q&A with Will.
Sure.
Dear
Will,
God.
do you have any questions?
Yeah. Do you have any questions? And then I have one last thing to close it out. But let's do the Q&A. Let's talk about it, man. What do you think? Because that's Dune. That's God Emperor of Dune right there. There's not a whole lot else to talk about without, really getting into it. And we're not going to do that right
We've
now.
only got so much time.
Well, I mean, as the nameplate says, I'm the resident Dune casual, and so I know what Richard has screamed at me, spitting food out of his mouth across the table from the Thai restaurant at me for years about Dune. And I know what I've seen in the movies, and obviously I know everything that we have now spent the last, 4 hours between these two episodes talking about, at least. There are a couple of things I really like about the Dune universe. The first is that he, I think, correctly realizes that the most important thing in some kind of far future, spacefaring civilization is the ability to do this interstellar travel, right? This warp drive technology. In Foundation, the Isaac Asimov thing, which I'm watching now on Apple, and don't
Cringe,
really
read the books.
recommend. Yeah, I've
Cringe,
totally
read the
have to
books.
read the books.
You should. They're fucking incredible.
Yeah, I will. Jeez. Isaac Asimov, I discovered a couple of months ago, wrote a complete guide to every single one of William Shakespeare's plays. It's an enormous fucking book. Yeah. He wrote basically 10 or 12 pages of introduction and commentary, and he goes play by play through Shakespeare's whole corpus. It's crazy. He's very into Shakespeare. So I believe in my heart that Isaac Asimov is better than what these goddamn showrunners with the Foundation show have done, which is kind of a travesty.
The Will Smith vehicle.
Yeah, iRobot's far worse. iRobot is just a way lower quality direction. Foundation is the show that really tries to be a high quality show, but is just lacking in execution kind of across the board. Anyway, whatever. Yeah. In Foundation, the Empire has a monopoly on the interstellar warp drive technology. And it's a closely guarded military secret. Similarly in Dune, with AI ruled out, the only method of space travel is the spice, and it only exists on this one planet. And it also reminds me of these old Timothy Leary ideas that space travel, life extension, psychedelic drugs,
dude,
and so
it's the
forth.
SMILE principle, dude.
Yeah,
space
it's
migration,
SMILE.
Intelligence, identification, life extension. Come on, man.
Yeah, so program. It's SMILE / I squared. I squared is the idea that you should think about being high while you're sober and think about being sober while you're high. And then you will, as Robert Anton Wilson says, eventually arrive permanently in one of two mental states, which is high with drugs and high without drugs. So anyway, yeah.
I can't wait for our Tim Leary episode.
Yeah.
It's in the works. Possibly in the future.
It is in the works. There's a very cool book that I'm not finished with yet, called I Have America Surrounded, which is a biography of Leary that is super good and talks about him busting out of a maximum security prison with the help of SDS and the Weather Underground and the Black Panthers. And then
outside
having to live...
I haven't read that one yet, though.
Then he has to live in Algeria with Eldridge Cleaver, and he basically takes Larry prisoner and gimps him for like a year. So it's a crazy story, kind of across the board. But anyway, yeah, back to what I like about Dune.
Well, here, let me just interject and answer your question, and just to clarify one thing, because I know we're going to get a comment about it. Spice, outside of the machine, the machine intelligence thing traveling through interstellar speeds, you've got Spice, which allows navigators to do it. But one of the sort of crux details, it's a detail, but it's relevant specifically for this question, is in the process of creating a perfect mate for the Leto II in Huinori, the Ixians, who are like the technological geniuses of the known universe, they are in the process of creating a non-AI technological method to travel faster than light. And so in that sort of framing device with the archaeologists talking about Leto II in his journals, it's like, yeah, they keep talking about this spice thing, which was an archaic way of traveling faster than light. We just used this like bog standard Ixion technology that was being developed at the time, right? So at a certain point, like they just
Which
completely,
Leto
they don't use
II knew
spice.
about.
Yeah, Leto II was well aware of, right? There's a lot of fun details like that in this huge tome, and that's the kind of reason why it's very difficult to talk about. I mean, we could
Mhm.
break it down it would take like 12 hours if we wanted to go like beat by beat break down God Emperor of Dune. But that's just that's just one of those details, right?
There's
And
also a certain point
yeah.
briefly where, he basically completes his diary, his worm diaries. And one big part of Siona, and we'll allow you to speak once more. I apologize. We'll take the ball gag out. It's one of the significant parts of Siona is that Siona thinks she steals his diary. He allows her to, because ultimately he wants it to spread throughout the universe after his quote unquote passing, when he goes back into the worms, to contextualize all of his decisions so that mankind knows what to do with the future they've been handed.
Yes, that's
okay. Yeah, 100%. Thanks for clearing that up.
Keep going though. Like you're on a roll there. I don't mean to break your mojo.
Okay,
I don't mean to bust your balls there, champ.
You bust those balls of yours, Will.
Okay. So let me just regain my train of thought. What I like about Dune. Well, yes. So the monopoly on the most important commodity creates, kind of this political dynamic where control over Arrakis becomes like the keystone to imperial power. And I think that with literature in general, the usual formula is that we can't understand the world that we're in because it's too close to us. It's right up on us, and we're like fish in water as just people living within society, right? And in order to see how weird and strange and how things function, we have to project it, 3,000 years in the future to a different planet. But you see patterns of events that are very clear historical markers, like I talked about how, the relationship between the Atreides or whoever the family in charge of extracting the spices and the Fremen. It's very similar to the colonial relationship between the, British and the Americans on the one hand versus, Arabs in the Middle East from, say, 1945 onward.
Or India from the the British imperial time, and the Philippines, and any number. Yeah, there's any number of colonial examples you want to mention, and it digs into it for sure.
Yeah, and you sometimes can't recognize things like that in your society without seeing it, on the big screen or whatever. But like for instance, in I think the first Dune movie. And if you've have either of you seen the movie Charlie Wilson's War with Tom Hanks? Okay,
no,
so
I've heard of it,
really quick, there's a pretty decent movie called Charlie Wilson's War where Tom Hanks plays Texas Senator Charlie Wilson, who makes it his mission in life to funnel arms and military aid to the Mujahideen to fight the Soviets in Afghanistan. And so Charlie Wilson becomes really kind of a yes. So he becomes the congressional fixer for an ongoing CIA operation called Operation Cyclone, where the United States moved Stinger missiles, AK-47s, vehicles, and so forth, with donkeys from northern Pakistan into Afghanistan, because the Soviets had invaded Afghanistan to put down a rebellion that the United States also encouraged.
Thrill.
The idea that was expressed by its principal architect, this guy named Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was Carter's national security advisor, was, okay, the United States just got done with Vietnam. We saw how severely that fucked us up, where we got drawn into basically another country's civil war. and then we couldn't extricate ourselves for 15 years and so forth. And the idea was we will draw the Soviets into Afghanistan, and that will become their Vietnam. That will deplete their military. It will overextend them. They will eventually be defeated. And in a very cost-effective way, we can fuck with them, even though officially we have détente and we have peace. We can make them feel the pain by buying weapons for the Mujahideen. So that's what we do, right? And one of the most effective weapons is the Stinger missile, which is a shoulder fire missile that can shoot down a helicopter or a fighter jet.
Well, I played Modern Warfare 2, I know.
Yeah. But in Charlie Wilson's War, right, there's all these shots of like, nomad warriors who have been hiding behind a rock, like popping out just as a Soviet gunship, a helicopter gunship comes buzzing past. And these, guys with towels wrapped around their face will hop out from behind a rock, take a shoulder fire missile, scream Allahu Akbar, shoot it. It's like a heat-seeking missile that blows up the helicopter. It falls to the ground. They all celebrate. This exact scene happened in the first Dune movie when Zendaya shoots down.
True,
right,
they did.
And so it is. The parallels are almost in your face, obvious in some of the political real life examples. Yeah. But I think just what you're describing, like this arc with like watching the two Dune movies. Paul's fate is an ideal male fantasy, right? And it is like this power trip and this ego trip of becoming the most important person in the world, being the only person who can save the world,
dating
becoming
Zendaya. Oh my god.
Yeah, dating first Zendaya and then Florence Pugh. It's yeah. So
yeah.
But when going further with like Children of Dune and God Emperor of Dune, I was like, and this is the male fantasy at its like really demented logical extreme or something.
It is. Yeah.
Almost incidentally, too. Like,
well, I don't think it's so incidental. I think Herbert knew what he was doing.
Well, here's the thing. I think that Herbert knew what he was doing with the messages he meant to send out. I think with the male fantasy aspect, that's more something that's easier for us to deconstruct nowadays in 2020 or in 2025, right? I don't think that the male fantasy aspect was something he took into account, but I do think that it is incidentally a decent message within that. Of this need to control and this idea that if I was just put in power, I would make everything right.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like, I'm the smartest guy. I know everything that's going to happen, and I'm going to fix this, and I'm going to look like an asshole doing it. I'm going to give humanity the bitter medicine it needs. I mean, that's the message of God Emperor of Dune, is giving humanity the bitter medicine. Do you have any other final thoughts? Because I've got a nice, easy quote to kind of wrap this episode up whenever you guys are ready.
I have a nice, easy quote, too. I alone can fix it, Donald Trump. Yeah.
Dude.
Anyway, you two can take us out now.
It's all you, Thomas. Right. Do it.
Great. Let's go. So this is a great quote from one of the stolen journals near the end of the book of Dune, and it summarizes really well, I think, kind of what Leto II's goals were and why he did what he did. You cannot understand history unless you understand its flowings, its currents, and the ways leaders move within such forces. A leader tries to perpetuate the conditions which demand his leadership. Thus, the leader requires the outsider. I caution you to examine my career with care. I am both leader and outsider. Do not make the mistake of assuming that I only created the church, which was the state. That was my function as leader, and I had many historical models to use as pattern. For a clue to my role as outsider, look at the arts of my time. The arts are barbaric. The favorite poetry, the epic. The popular dramatic ideal, heroism. Dances, wildly abandoned. From Maneo's viewpoint, he is correct in describing this as dangerous. It stimulates the imagination. It makes people feel the lack of that which I have taken from them. What did I take from them? The right to participate in history, the stolen journals. And with that, I think we can wrap it up here and answer the grand question that God Emperor of Dune asks. Would you still love me if I was a worm?
The grand question of this of the God Emperor Worm passing you the note. Do you have a crush on me, yes or no?
Mm. Amen, brother. Well, thank you,
Thank you.
Will. You're done. You're free. You don't have to listen to us whinge about Dune and how great it is anymore.
I know for a fact that you will both talk to me more about Dune, and
Yeah.
that
Oh, yeah.
I cannot for a moment take you seriously.
Well, there's 2 more
I
books.
appreciate the gesture. Yeah, I think that I will have to find some way to punish you guys if you keep talking to me about Dune. I think without consequences and boundaries, I don't know how I can do it anymore. But yes, okay, now that you have squeezed 5 fucking hours
Yeah.
of Dune out of me, I need you guys to move on to real world subjects.
Well,
So
speaking of
Andrew
which, Will,
Jackson,
we've got all sorts of
I was
good
about to
stuff.
say.
Okay.
Will, why don't you tease the audience a bit with what we're going to do next? Going back to our roots.
We are going to talk about the man who is currently hanging in the Oval Office right over Donald Trump's shoulder. A man that both Donald Trump and J.D. Vance identify as their favorite president, namely Old Hickory himself, Andrew Jackson, a man who has personally killed more than a dozen people, and who, in case you slept through American history, did the Trail of Tears and invaded Florida. He also had this very weird chapter where he decided that the bank was the Antichrist and he tried to destroy it. And he was partially successful, and it triggered an economic depression.
Did he destroy the Fed, dude? Try to get rid of that Federal Reserve.
He went after God, I don't remember the name of the bank, but Nicholas Biddle's Bank of America or whatever. And the resulting credit crunch killed a lot of fucking people.
Wonderful.
And he made it his point in life to personally deal with anyone who presented an obstacle to him. And he was just a crazy figure. He had an insane life. He was an orphan by the time he was a teenager. He fought in the Revolutionary War as like a 12-year-old. He had a really dramatic, epic life, and made some catastrophically bad decisions as well, and is vastly over-credited with this thing that American historians call Jacksonian
democracy. Yeah, buddy. Yeah. Well, so I'm stoked to hear all about it, but like I said, and you guys are just audience, tune in next time to hear the thrilling tale of Andrew Jackson. We're going to cover all his faults and whimsies and the history, but in the meantime, subscribe to if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe the video. If you're listening on Spotify, follow us, and if you feel so inclined, please subscribe on Patreon. Give us a couple bucks. Motivate us to keep making more of these. It means a lot. And thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
On Spotify too.
Spotify, biggest thing you can do probably is subscribe on YouTube. That's what helps us the most, I think.
Well, anyways, audience, I'm your friend in real life. So is Will and Thomas. They will respond to all your messages if you stalk them on Facebook. Have a wonderful time, and thank you so much for listening.
We're like a Tamagotchi that you can pull out of your pocket whenever you need surrogate friendship.
Capture me in a Pokeball and use me to fight in your battles.
Amen, brother.
Audience, use Richard. Use Richard.
Use him, please.
Use him. Use him. All right.
Use me. Goodbye. Love you.